Hello, my name is Giacomo Lozzi and I'm Urban Freight Coordinator at Polis, the European network of cities and regions working on transport innovation. Zero-emission zones exist within a large ecosystem of regulations, financial incentives, infrastructure investments, and other urban, regional, national, and international plans and projects. Public authorities should be aware that factors both within and beyond city limits can significantly influence the success of zero-emission zones for freight planning. These have been collected in the How to Guide on Zero Emission Zone for Freight, and I'll briefly summarize them in this video, while you can deepen each of them in the following modules. Collaborating with neighboring cities, regional and national governments can facilitate zero-emission zones planning. Examples include the establishment of a common approach or common principles for these zones, as well as coordinating public outreach and other communications about the zones. Such measures also create a predictability that can help companies make the business case for zero-emission solutions. Since many companies operate across multiple cities and neighboring countries, common approaches and consistent implementation timelines allow them to plan and invest with greater confidence. Aligned policy and financial support can also encourage the uptake of zero-emission vehicles as well. While announcing a zero-emission zone is a cornerstone policy in itself, there are also complementary measures that are needed to ensure its effectiveness. Such measures include financial incentives and subsidies to reduce upfront vehicle costs, as well as non-monetary benefits that encourage behavior change of operators, shippers, or receivers, offering various additional services, facilities, or incentives. The financial incentives and subsidies can promote the spread of zero-emission logistics vehicles, for example, electric vans or cargo bikes, while at the same time reducing purchase or management costs. Various countries have implemented national subsidies and incentive programs. For example, registration tax exemptions, tax deductions, etc. Non-monetary incentives, on the other hand, can provide a comparative advantage for zero-emission operators. This may include extended time windows, exclusive use of preferential lanes, parking and loading and unloading areas. When defining the package of these measures and incentives supporting a successful zero-emission zone, it is important to note that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for freight. So the dialogue with the stakeholders is critical to identify the most effective measures. The charging infrastructure for electric freight vehicles is a major obstacle for many operators. A coherent and dedicated strategy must be developed in consultation with the logistics and recharging infrastructure operators. This should take into account the specific needs of each category of freight, as well as the balance between the public and private infrastructure. An efficient charging strategy for urban logistics depends mainly on three factors. One is the location, so where to charge and how often charging can or should take place. The second is the charger type, so either fast or slow, and the third is the size of the vehicle's battery. Needs vary both by vehicle and industry, so a study carried out in the Netherlands, for example, defined the elements of this strategy, but also how to segment the charging needs by sector. Cities play a key role as facilitators, so they can bring together multiple stakeholders to ensure a functioning charging infrastructure for all categories of vehicles and freight operations. Cities also need to harmonize their strategy with neighboring municipalities at the regional level, as most public chargers are needed where owners of the vehicles live. And moreover, the depots are generally located outside the zero-emission zone. Since a zero-emission zone for freight would likely increase the number of zero-emission freight vehicles, it is important to consider the roles and responsibilities of all parties involved in the e-freight charging chain. Finally, data from the public sector, logistics operators, and other economic agents is needed to understand the main drivers of the logistics system. Decisions about the size, affected vehicles, location, incentives, and enforcement should be based on local data and evidence when you plan a new zero-emission zone. In practice, the planners face huge gaps in the data they can access. Public authorities can make data sharing a requirement for access to zones or charging stations, for example. Or in exchange for installing an onboard data unit on vehicles, they can offer special access to parking areas or bus lanes or extended hours for zero emission zone access or other privileges. At the same time, cities should clearly define the purpose for which they collect and analyze data so as to entice the private sector to share them and establish a model to understand and interpret the data. In January 2019, the city of Milan launched Area B, the largest low-emission zone in Italy, covering 129 square kilometers. Area B covers 72% of the city's area and includes 98% of Milan's residents. Area B planners were particularly sensitive to the challenges that such a zone may pose to owners of small businesses, and in particular the street market vendors. So to provide vendors with time to comply with the new restrictions and gather data on freight traffic and routes for this freight segment, the city initiated an experiment. This project included the exemptions for vendors who agreed to have an onboard unit installed in their vehicles to track the distance and routes traveled within the area. In Brussels, the requirements for data sharing are mandated as a part of vehicle access or charging schemes. Brussels city officials require an onboard unit installed on heavy trucks as part of the congestion charge scheme implemented in Flanders. Thanks to this onboard unit, planners were able to obtain and analyze GPS data for truck routes. There are more and more ways for businesses to share travel data in a specific city without posing a risk to their operations or business model. For example, the PD Group, a large postal company, has launched an air quality monitoring pilot to collect and share data with cities, which allows them to have an impact on the debate on the implementation of zero-emission zones. That's all from my side. You'll see more of these elements in the next presentations of this Unit 3. Thanks for your attention.